I want to turn now to a couple of folks who can help us make more sense of all this. Former FBI agent Bobby Chacon and counterterrorism analyst and host of the Aaron Cohen show, Aaron Cohen. I appreciate both of you gentlemen for being with me tonight. Let me just walk you through this. It's been kind of a wild day and a half in terms of the story from the FBI since I got to New Orleans. Early yesterday morning, you had the FBI coming out and saying, this is not terrorism. The mayor in the same press conference said, this is terrorism. A few hours later, they have another press conference and say, yes, this is terrorism. And the FBI goes a step farther and says, not only do we have one suspect, we believe that he had help. There could be more people out on the street. There might be more bombs. People need to be vigilant. We had you on last night, Bobby, and people were on edge, thinking there could be like a terror cell in the United States that was about to be discovered. And then we wake up this morning. I go out to another press conference. It's a new person from the FBI. It's now an Assistant Director Reyes. They brought him in from D.C. to handle things, and he says that the storyline has now totally changed since yesterday, and they believe this guy in New Orleans was a lone wolf, that there's nothing to worry about, that they don't think anyone was helping him. A total 180 since yesterday. I want to play you a little bit of what I asked at that press conference, then we're going to talk about it. The message has really changed since yesterday. Yesterday, the FBI said that people should be vigilant, that he did not act alone, that he likely had help. And now you're coming out the very next day and saying he was a lone wolf, everything is safe, the game moves on, everybody have a good time. How can you be so sure just 12 hours later?
In today's world, I get it. Information, we get information like that. Everybody lives in a 15-second TikTok video. We think that life operates like it does on our phones, and it just doesn't. Information changes. In fact, that's why we ask the media for patience.
We want to be transparent with the public. Years of the FBI not being transparent, we're being as transparent as we possibly can. Unfortunately, as we're being transparent, unfortunately for that, there is some information that we have to go back and recorrect. We're confident at this point that there is no accomplices.
All right, Bobby, I want to start with you because last night, same time, same place, I was talking to you, and we were talking about the fact that the FBI thought there were other people out there. It all changed this morning. What are we supposed to make of that?
Well, I mean, look, this is the nature of investigations, and, people, this demand for constant transparency is what happens. I've had, say, homicide investigations that I've worked where I've had 4 or 5 different suspects in the beginning, and I go down the road and they all look kind of good. You can rule 1 out and 2 out, and as you get down the road, you get to the final guy. But during the course of the investigation, all of them look good at one point or another, and you get derogatory information about them that maybe not be related to the homicide. And to make all that public immediately when you get it is a mistake. But it's this demand for transparency from moment one. Investigations change. It's not a 180. Look, and the FBI didn't state that this was not a terrorism. One person in the FBI, she was filling in for her boss who's on vacation. And she made a mistake. She was inexperienced in front of a microphone. So they sent in the big guns from Washington to correct her. It was one person made a mistake. It wasn't the organization saying this was not terrorism. One person made a mistake, so they corrected it. This happens in the early days of an investigation. Mistakes get made. They don't normally get so publicized, but now we have this demand for transparency from moment one, and it impacts how the public feels about the investigating agencies because they don't understand the nature of investigations. They haven't done this for 30 years like I have. They haven't gone down a road thinking one person's guilty and getting to a certain point down that road going, oh, this is not our guy. Let's back up and let's forget about this other information that's irrelevant to the investigation that we know about this person that's derogatory because it's not relevant to public information. But now we live in a different world, and that's what we're seeing now.
Yeah, and yesterday there were the reports that there was a law enforcement bulletin that went out that said there were 3 men and a woman who may have been caught on camera actually placing explosives here in New Orleans. Today, this assistant director said, we investigated, figured out that they were actually just bystanders, that they were not people helping with the attack. But that was something else that scared people. I want to show you guys, too, there's some new photos that just came out within the last hour or so. These are real surveillance photos that we have now that actually show the suspect on surveillance video. They're stills, but of him in New Orleans. He's sort of dressed up. There you go. It's interesting to see this angle of him. He's in jeans and he's got this kind of like nice coat on, and they actually show him walking around, and then he puts an IED, we learned today, into a cooler. We've got a picture of the cooler too, and they say that, well, there it is, the cooler. What they believe now is he's the only one who was placing explosives. But Aaron, I want to go to you though, because, you know, I get what Bobby's saying, that the investigation changes and as they learn more, but it seemed like a big change from telling everyone that there were people who helped him, today saying he definitely acted alone. I mean, do you think, Aaron, we could get another narrative, another change tomorrow?
Well, I think Bobby's nailing it on the head. Investigations are fluid. I think as more information gets released, we're going to find out more about these both these individuals, with the Tesla in Vegas, and obviously with the attacker on Bourbon Street. But I got to tell you, Brian, my concern isn't about the investigation. That's not what's getting my heart pumping here. My concern is about the failure in the system, and the attack in New Orleans and Vegas highlight, in my opinion, some very critical flaws in America's overall counter-terror strategy. And our system I don't believe, is designed to address these evolving threats that we're seeing today. And I think that there are serious problems throughout the federal agencies, including the FBI. We just saw it with Trump almost getting his head shot off. And I think that there's some competing priorities with these federal agencies that are not the best priorities that are going to focus on protecting Americans, including these DEI initiatives. I think it's too much, and I think it's distracting from the primary mission. And I think the federal government needs to get back to what they were mandated to do, which is focus only on protecting the American people. And with all due respect to Bobby, that woman came out. She was the deputy SAC, or the SAC of that office. And she came out and gave some very bad information at a very critical time. She shouldn't have been speaking. I'm glad they did pull the plug on her. But in my opinion, Brian, these attacks were preventable, both of them. The truck ramming, the Tesla explosion, all this could have been stopped. And that's how you deal with terrorism. It's about better intelligence and better intelligence coordination and proactive measures. I don't care about the investigation. No one does that better than Bobby and his team. I'm about solutions. And right now, America's not geared to be able to deal with an emerging terror threat. These guys, it's only going to get worse from here, Brian. This is where we're at right now. And there needs to be a lot of different creative solutions to start looking at how we get back on track with protecting America and putting together a whole new way of dealing with this. And it might include creating an entire new pure domestic counterterror agency here in the United States, specifically to deal with these emerging threats. That's how we do it in Israel. And we still can't stop them all, but we stop thousands of them a year. And that's where I'm at with this right now.
Yeah, and I get the point Bobby made that people make mistakes, but I mean, the fact she said, and this was the first big press conference when everyone found out that all these people were dead, that she said it wasn't terrorism, and then the mayor had just before it said it was terrorism. I was even sitting there watching, thinking, like, did she just make a mistake? Or it was very confusing, especially you just consider something different from the FBI. I mean, were you surprised, Bobby, to see they brought in this assistant director today to sort of run the show?
Not at all. Not at all. After that performance yesterday, and I'm not sure. Aaron used the term DEI hires. I don't know what the situation with this agent was, but that's a glaring mistake. And I can tell you, the retired agent population that I'm in contact with every day cringed as soon as we heard it. And we don't know anything about the case, but we cringed as soon as we heard that announcement. That's wrong. We knew it was wrong, and we didn't know anything about the case. You can't make that kind of statement at that point in time. And I'm dumbfounded to understand why she made it.
Yeah, and I think it just adds to people being more confused even today with the different narratives changing, and it just sort of started off on a bad foot. I want to turn the focus now, though, to like an even bigger mystery right now. Very strange case, the Tesla Cybertruck explosion right in front of the Trump Hotel in Vegas. The video is crazy. I want to welcome someone else into the conversation right now, live from Las Vegas, investigative reporter with Nexstar affiliate KLAS, David Charnes. This is one of our News Nation local reporters. It's what makes News Nation special. It's not like we've just flown a guy in to researched this for the last couple of days. He's got local sources. He's been digging into this. He's outside the area where it happened. David, have we learned much more about this man, Matthew Livelsberger, who was inside the Tesla? Apparently, he was burned so badly they couldn't identify him, but then we also at the same time know that he also shot himself before the explosion. I mean, do we know much more about him or what may have led up to him wanting to do this?
Well, we know that Matthew Livelsberger drove more than 800 miles to go from Colorado Springs to here where we are at Las Vegas. I'm live here at the Las Vegas Metro Police headquarters where they're trying to get as much information as they can from that burned Cybertruck. You know, Teslas have a lot of different kind of cameras, a lot of technology, and they're trying to pull and salvage what they can from that vehicle at one of their bays here to get all that information. What we know about him was he really had a decorated history with the Army. He was with Special Forces. He was a Green Beret. He joined the Army in 2007. 2006. He's 37 years old. It would seem, though, when you're driving that far, it's not easy when you're in the West here to go from point A to point B. Traveling hundreds and hundreds of miles in a Tesla, which you have to keep charging, to do something like this. We know he rented this Cybertruck several days ago through an app and appeared to canvass the Trump Hotel here in the hour before this explosion. So at this point, from what we're seeing from what police and the FBI are telling us, this does seem to be something that was planned. But Brian, I have to tell you that when I saw this video, you know, I just thought it was a truck after New Year's Eve, a Cybertruck after New Year's Eve. Someone has a bunch of leftover stuff in their trunk, and it was an accident. But my sources quickly telling me yesterday, no, you're kind of naive. This is no accident, and now they're trying to figure out exactly if this is tied to anything or if this was someone just trying to make a statement on the first day of the year.
Yeah, and people were trying to blame the Cybertruck in the beginning, you know, saying this thing exploded, but it was quick to come out that they had the explosives and the fireworks and mortars inside the truck. It had nothing to do with the Cybertruck. Something else interesting, though, is President Biden has now come out twice and said he doesn't believe that the incident here in New Orleans and what happened in Vegas are necessarily connected. The FBI said it again today. But the sheriff in Las Vegas, and I was listening to the whole press conference today, was quick to point out that he's not ready to come to that conclusion that they're not connected. I want to play you what he said today.
How are we working to rule in or rule out any connections to the New Orleans event? And the answer to that is every tip and lead that comes in, every piece of evidence that comes in, we don't discount it. We work it through. You know, it's an interesting thing during these kinds of investigations that if these turn out to be simply similarities, very strange similarities to have. And so we're not prepared to rule in or rule out anything at this point. There's lots more for us to do in this investigation.
So what do you make of this, Bobby, that the President of the United States is saying that there's no evidence they're connected and that the FBI is saying no evidence they're connected, but the sheriff there in Las Vegas today says that he's not ready to rule it out? What does it mean, Bobby?
Well, different people have both different thresholds before they meet something like that, an opinion and stuff like that, and then the level of information available to them. So the president has the information directly from the FBI. So if the FBI makes that conclusion, the president makes that conclusion. That's the same conclusion because they're working off the same set of information. The FBI has obviously gotten enough information where they're comfortable in making that pronouncement. Let me tell you, the FBI is usually very conservative when it comes to making those kinds of pronouncements. So I think that they probably have enough information on both cases that they're confident that they weren't. And by the same token, the sheriff is taking a very cautious approach, as he should. There's nothing wrong with that. It's probably a prudent position to take at his point because he's not privy to a lot of the information that the FBI has. So I think they're both kind of proper statements. I mean, the FBI is making it based on a lot more information that they know of, and the sheriff is being prudent in taking a cautious approach.
Aaron, the fact that this man in Vegas in the Cybertruck and the terrorist here in New Orleans both were in the Army, and the guy in Vegas apparently was a decorated soldier. You know, a number of medals and awards over the years. What do you make of that, Aaron? I mean, is that just a coincidence? I mean, it's certainly disturbing. As an American, it bothers you, but is this just a coincidence?
Well, yeah, Brian, it's an interesting question. So there's two different types of operations when it comes to terrorism. Bobby's specialty and what the FBI does better than anybody in the world, and I work as a reserve deputy. I have for almost 20 years, and I've worked with the FBI, with my agency. No one does it better than these guys. And when it comes to peeling open these investigations, like Bobby said, they're going to take their time. Whether or not they're connected, I'm not sure how the FBI rules it, but from a counter-terror agency and the way that we look at it in Israel, we would consider all of this connected and suspect until it's proven otherwise. And the reason why is because with terrorism, we have to assume that everything is a threat until we dismiss it as not being a threat. And it allows us to get in front and stay in front of the threats or those potential targets or suicide bombers. And so as far as them being connected, I would say assume that they are at this point until the FBI and all these agencies start to unravel that and say, okay, you know what? These are two separate, isolated events. One has nothing to do with the other. They're both veterans. They both served on the same base, but this is not related. And the fact that they both rented their cars using the same act, great. It's just a coincidence. However, I will say that the lack of communication between the agencies is what concerns me here. Bobby spoke to it just now. The fact that the sheriff isn't privy to the same information that Biden or President Biden is means that there isn't a very clear flow of intelligence or information. And that could just be for PR reasons, and that's fine. But when you're talking about counterterrorism operations, Brian, this gets back to what I was just talking about on that earlier question, which is I believe there needs to be a pure, dedicated domestic counterterror law enforcement agency that has the type of focus and efficiency, and I'm talking advanced AI, real-time intelligence sharing, with that focus on infrastructure security at its core. A lot of these agencies have a lot of different missions, but that type of agency would allow all of that information to coagulate perfectly efficiency so that you don't have blunders like this assistant special agent in charge who they yanked. And it just doesn't make the FBI look good. And there's no one better than the FBI. They're the best. And so I think there needs to be a greater coordination here and a different way of looking at this thing again, Brian.
Brian, if I could.
Well, listen, I mean, the FBI...
The information that we know about this Special Forces soldier and what he participated in his service could be classified information. There could be some PTSD things that are medical information that they want to protect. They want to protect some of the operations he was involved in. If they have some of that information from his Army buddies, from his wife, they may not share that with the sheriff. They may say, look, this is an isolated incident, PTSD, it's suicide. But some of the information, the medical information and the operational information that this guy might have been involved in may be kept quiet because of the nature of that information.
Yeah, it's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. But the sheriff, when he had the press conference, the FBI was also in the room. They spoke too, so I'd assume that they've been communicating, but who knows? David, I want to go back to you real quick. One thing a lot of people asking me about on X is the fact that this man in the Tesla was burned so badly, they said he wasn't able to be identified initially, but they were able to determine that he shot himself first, but that his passport was found on him. Is that right? And they could see the passport? That's got people confused. Like, how did the car explode and you couldn't identify him, but was the passport in the car?
Yeah, so police did find the passport and some other identifying items around the car, including two guns, one of which they assumed that he shot himself with. And, the sheriff has kind of been the #1 spokesperson for Tesla Cybertrucks because he said yesterday and he reiterated today that the truck itself prevented the explosion because of how it's built from hurting the building or damaging the building any further. There's really no damage to the building. There's just some, minor fire damage. So the truck itself, the way it's built, prevented some things from burning. I just want to comment a little about what you were talking about before. I think the way that it works here with the FBI and the police is that the White House is probably getting the information last. And we found out some of that yesterday when they had a whole press conference here saying that they didn't think there was a connection. And then there was a statement from the White House. I believe there was a statement from the president saying there may be a connection. So I think the way that information is trickling down is kind of here out versus out in. But that's just my thought.
I mean, so the White House getting the information last. Okay, not exactly what I would have expected, and a lot of communication issues here in New Orleans, also in Vegas, apparently. David, Bobby, Aaron, appreciate you all so much. I'm sure we'll be calling you on you in the coming days as the investigation continues. Thank you for coming on tonight.
Yeah, as a fan of Israeli special operations, were you blown away by that incredible pager operation? Grab yourself a signed copy of my best-selling memoir, Brotherhood of Warriors. Hit the link down in the description. I've got a limited number of signed copies to go out and learn about how we train in Israel and about my time as one of the first Americans to serve in one of Israel's top special operations unit, the Elite Mistaravim. This is the unit that goes undercover, dresses as Arabs to stop terrorists dead in their tracks. Hit the link down in the description and learn about Israeli special operations through an American optic. Hit the link in the description and grab yourself a signed copy of Brotherhood of Warriors.